If you often find yourself getting angry, complaining, criticizing, and finding fault with others, if you're always trying to prove you're the best, if you're often shy, constantly feeling anxious, insecure, and unworthy, if you're withdrawing from daily activities and social connections, if any of this sounds familiar, it's very likely that a deep-seated inferiority complex is lurking within you. This feeling of inferiority is also what's steering you off the path to finding the meaning of your life. Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Step Forward, the channel where we break down personal development through great books. Today, I want to share a masterpiece of individual psychology from the renowned Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler. The book is called What Life Should Mean to You. This is a classic, but it's also very academic and not an easy read. But I truly believe that if you understand it, you'll have a chance to meet your true self. Most importantly, through the core ideas of individual psychology, you'll see the direct link between inferiority complexes and the meaning of life. And from there, find your true purpose. In today's video, I'm going to distill the best insights from this book for you. Let's get into it. There was once a little boy who had rickets, making him short, frail, and slightly hunchbacked. He wasn't great in school, always at the bottom of his class, and constantly compared to his handsome, all-around talented older brother. All of this made him live with a deep sense of inferiority. However, that very boy, driven by his own feelings of inadequacy, eventually became a doctor of psychology and one of the three most influential figures in the field. The person who started with inferiority and grew into superiority was none other than Alfred Adler. Adler had a tough childhood. He wasn't well liked. His health was poor. He nearly died from pneumonia twice. At the age of 4, he witnessed his younger brother's death and was hit by a car twice. With such a traumatic childhood, Freudian psychoanalysis would suggest that someone with so much early trauma would inevitably have a miserable adult life. But is that really how it works? From his childhood experiences, Adler was determined to become a doctor to save children with fates like his own. He later fell in love with psychoanalysis and became a student of Freud. But the more he studied, the more he felt that key Freudian concepts like childhood trauma and causal determinism didn't add up. So he left and founded his own school of thought, individual psychology. Later, another figure, Carl Jung, who was initially a supporter of Freud, also publicly criticized Freud's theories. Eventually, the three of them, Freud, Adler, and Jung, became the three giants of psychology. Individual psychology is the opposite of psychoanalysis in this way. It believes that what a person has gone through is not as important as how that individual subjectively views their past experiences. For example, we often think the reason we don't like someone is because they have a lot of annoying flaws. However, individual psychology would show you that because you've already decided to avoid a relationship with this person, you actively search for a list of their flaws to justify your dislike. As for why you want to avoid the relationship in the first place, it's to protect yourself from potential hurt. Your act of nitpicking their flaws is completely subjective. Why am I explaining a bit about individual psychology? Because this perspective, also known as the teleological view of individual psychology, runs through the entire book. You need to understand it before you start reading. Inferiority makes you misunderstand the meaning of life. A feeling of inferiority is the beginning of superiority. Adler asserted that all of us, to some extent, have deep-seated feelings of inadequacy. We feel inferior about our looks, our low income, our unimpressive jobs, our lack of education, our poor background, and so on. There's a guy I know who's short, so he wears shoe lifts every day to be 1 to 2 inches taller. When he takes photos with friends, he secretly stands on his tiptoes. This act of tiptoeing reveals that he definitely has some feelings of inadequacy about his height. But is that wrong? Is it something to be ashamed of?
Of course not. For a long time, many of us have exaggerated the dark side of inferiority, silently clinging to our shortcomings, hiding them in the shadows, always afraid of others seeing our weaknesses. But Adler tells us that a person's life is fundamentally a process of overcoming feelings of inferiority and striving for superiority. Feeling inferior is normal. You don't need to be ashamed of it. He even argued that all of human civilization has developed because of this feeling, and that our inferiority complex becomes the driving force for our progress. Just look at Adler's own life and you'll see this clearly. A great poet once said, "Nature traps man in darkness and forces him to forever long for the light." It's because we desire to overcome feelings of inadequacy that we try to improve ourselves. However, without the right approach, you might find yourself hopelessly stuck in your feelings of inferiority. For instance, a person who grew up poor and looked down upon might, as an adult, be driven to make a ton of money at all costs, even if that money holds no real meaning for them. A boy who was always told, "The neighbor's kid A is a straight A student, what's wrong with you?" grows up to be highly competitive, competing for grades in school and for positions at work. Adler had a patient named Marquis who frequently had affairs with married men. What's more terrifying is that she poisoned several women to steal their husbands. When Adler studied her, he discovered that Marquis was an abandoned child with a small, slightly deformed body. The reason she could be so ruthless was that only by stealing another woman's husband could she feel a sense of superiority. Her inferiority complex made her crave attention from the outside world, ultimately leading her down a criminal path. You see, feelings of helplessness make people feel inferior to their fate. If you go down the right path, feelings of inferiority can be beneficial, becoming a lever that makes a person truly excellent. Adler is a prime example. This kind of inferiority is what Adler called a feeling of inferiority. But on the other hand, if you get lost while striving for superiority, you will inevitably make mistakes and lose the meaning of your life. In individual psychology, this detrimental type of inferiority is called an inferiority complex. There's nothing wrong with a feeling of inferiority. An inferiority complex is what destroys you. People with an inferiority complex often blame others. They believe their weaknesses are the fault of their parents, their environment, an unfair life, or other people. This act of blaming helps them compensate for their feelings of inferiority. But not being as good as others doesn't mean you are less than them. Subjectively internalizing this feeling of inadequacy leads to a sense of being less than and becoming obsessed with it. Conversely, being overly confident is also a sign of an inferiority complex. Some people always believe they are superior to others, constantly bragging and exaggerating their achievements. However, they do this to hide their feelings of weakness, helplessness, and dependence. At this point, they move from an inferiority complex to a superiority complex. These two complexes coexist and overlap. Be careful of excessive inferiority and over-the-top confidence. If you let these complexes control you, they will lead you to mistakes, cause mental distress, and lose the meaning of your life. You need to try to recognize these complexes in yourself or observe them in others. This is incredibly important. Adler identified two types of inferiority complexes: primary inferiority, which begins in childhood due to feelings of helplessness or being compared unfavorably to others, leading to an inferiority complex in adulthood, and secondary inferiority, which occurs in adults who fail to achieve their subjective goals for safety and success. As a result, leftover feelings from childhood intensify and create an inferiority complex. So where does the real meaning of life lie? We often say, a leopard can't change its spots, but Adler didn't think so. Individual psychology believes the reason people don't change is because they don't want to change. Changing means accepting uncertainty and facing difficulties. But people love stability and ease, so they lack the courage to change. The reason a person pursues superiority in the wrong way is because they are too self-absorbed, don't know how to cooperate with others, and don't develop a sense of community. So if you have to live for something, instead of living for personal gain, live for the community. If a person can shift their focus from their personal ego to social interest and contributing to others, they will definitely be able to overcome themselves.
There's a very important definition in the book. The sign that your life has true meaning is whether that meaning is valued and can be shared by others. You have to know that no matter who you are or what you do, if you want to become superior, go further, and live a happier life, you must spend your entire life thinking about one thing. What do I need to do to connect with this society? What can I do to be useful? If you don't, no matter how much money you make, how big a house you buy, how expensive a car you drive, or how high your status is, you will always feel empty, lonely, and insecure. Just as Confucius taught, the virtuous are free from anxiety. A person who lives by benevolence, who always cares for and cooperates with others, and who knows how to solve social problems, will surely find peace and value in their own life. Connect your personal value with the value of society. When you can care for and contribute to others, you can overcome your feelings of inferiority and achieve true superiority. So how do we know if our lifestyle is problematic? How do we identify our own feelings of inferiority? The book offers a great method. Return to your childhood memories, the place where you can truly understand yourself. Close your eyes and see what images from your early years come to mind. To use myself as an example, the first image that comes to my mind is getting lost when I was 5. I was in a private preschool waiting for my mom as usual, but she never came. Not knowing what to do, I secretly left to find her, burst into tears in a crowd, and then got lost. For years after, even when joking, I would still blame my mom for that. After reading this book, it finally clicked. This childhood memory has followed me into adulthood and shaped my personality. The real reason I blamed my mom was that I felt abandoned. I desperately needed and expected her care. This is a classic sign of an inferiority complex, wanting others' attention. When you close your eyes, you'll see happy memories and sad ones. They are all mirrors reflecting whether you have a healthy psyche or are facing problems. You need to understand that individual psychology is essentially about finding the flaws in your cooperation with others, starting from your childhood memories. Start the change within your family and at school. You can see how much of an impact childhood has on each of us. The family in the early years is the most important place for shaping a person's lifestyle, and school education is an extension and supplement to that. When a mother starts to hold their baby, she begins the first act of cooperation with that child. At that moment, whether the mother truly loves and enjoys holding them becomes incredibly important. A mother who genuinely loves her child will easily hold them comfortably. Especially during bath time, the baby won't fuss but will laugh and play happily. This is cooperation. You see, the first cooperation begins with the mother's true love for her child. The greatest gift heaven gives to parents is the chance to care for their children from the very beginning. Earning money is crucial for the family's finances, especially with a new member, but if you miss the early days of building your child's ability to cooperate, which also helps you learn to cooperate, it's a tremendous loss. On the other hand, many parents complain about housework, about cooking for their kids, about helping them with their homework. They complain about everything. Maybe it's because deep down they think, I should have a more exciting life. My life shouldn't be like this. So the complaints are sometimes just a way of proving they are striving for superiority within themselves. At that point, you'll see that the child cannot learn to cooperate well from their parents. The more you read, the more you travel, the more you learn, the more you'll realize that no one is the master of their circumstances. Life is short. People are fragile. The 3 practical problems, the 3 barriers of career, social relationships, and love, marriage, are always before us. We constantly search for solutions, but we are never satisfied with the status quo. No matter what, humans will always strive. But you must remember one thing clearly. Only by cooperating with others will our struggle be full of hope and meaning. That struggle is the lifelong journey to find the true meaning of your life.
You'll notice that almost all self-help books guide us toward having a kind heart, opening our compassion, and developing love. For Adler, he once again confirms for us a greater meaning. We must transcend our personal ego to live a life of contribution, cooperation, care, and service to others. If we can do that, we will touch the meaning of life.
The book What Life Should Mean to You is different from other books because it starts from the psychology of each individual to find the reasons why we can't live for the community, why we don't know how to cooperate with our loved ones or those around us. The reason is the deep-seated inferiority complex that originates in childhood and follows us into adulthood. And it's that very complex that causes us to lose the meaning of life. As Einstein said, a person's value should be seen in what he gives and not in what he is able to receive. Therefore, I hope that you and I can step beyond our feelings of inferiority and find our true value, to become excellent with a heart that is peaceful, serene, and full of altruism. Live life to the fullest and give more so that your feelings of inferiority become the starting point for your superiority. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who need it. Don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to catch my latest videos every week. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.